Now, if you think you know everything there is to know about the Beatles, a new film about their career might make you think again. Tonight it has its world premiere in, well, where else? Liverpool.
From the Oscar-winning director Ron Howard, 8 days a week, The Touring Years uses previously unseen footage to chart the Fab Four's rise from playing the Cavern Club, of course, to sell-out tours of America. Ian Haslam is on the blue carpet for us tonight. It's at the Liverpool Fact, and a short time ago he sent us this.
Yes, welcome to the red carpet, or should I say the blue carpets, here at Fact Cinema in Liverpool, ahead of the world premiere of this new film about the Beatles. What more can be said about the Beatles that hasn't already been said, I hear you ask? Well, this new film has new footage, enhanced old footage, as well as interviews with the two surviving band members, and it documents their years on tour between 1962 and 1966. Many tales to tell, as Paul McCartney says in the film. By the end it was quite complicated, but in the beginning things were very simple.
I remember so vividly showing up at a show and you'd be in your ordinary clothes and then you'd take out of your little suitcase your suit and then finally your Beatle boots and you'd stand up and you just looked at each other like, yeah, there we are.
It's billed as the band you know, the story you don't. Unless that is your Larry Kane, who joined the Beatles on 3 tours against his father's advice.
He said, watch your back, Larry. These guys are a menace to society.
And his first encounter with John Lennon didn't initially allay concerns.
He looked at me and said, oh, you, my friend, are a nerd from the 1950s. And I said, well, you look like a slob from Liverpool.
50 years on from the final tour, the new film has revived memories.
I was just chilled. I was shaking. And my wife said, well, what happened? I said, I felt like it was there.
There was one thing to be said about us. We'd always stick together.
We had to all decide that we agreed on a thing. 4 votes had to be carried.
You know, the proof's in the pudding. It worked really well.
Ron Howard has done the impossible. He's taken you back in real-time history to the actual moment that they started.
Along with stories you may never have heard before, like that of Beatles fan Kitty. She was attending an upcoming concert in Jacksonville where, as Larry himself had told the Beatles, there would be segregation.
Paul got up and he was the first one who said, why should we play before a crowd that separates a person from other people just because the color of her skin is darker than them? And they did negotiate this whole thing, and it was desegregated. And Kitty and her friends were able to sit there and watch this concert, and that changed a lot.
Some really fascinating insights there. Well, I'm pleased to say I'm now joined on the blue carpet by Julia Baird, who is a sister of John Lennon. Julia, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Now, you've not seen the film yet, have you?
No,
just tell us, we know all about the Beatles, but are you expected to find out anything you didn't know about your brother's band?
Well, what we've just said, I mean, what else is there that we don't know? We're going to have to scrutinise second by second to say, oh, I didn't know that before. But there is unseen footage, isn't there? What I like about it before I even go in is the fact that it's a true narrative. It's not somebody's film that they've fantasised and made up, and it's actual footage. So it is the proper story. And maybe for the first time we've got the A to Z of those years.
And obviously you're used to seeing your brother on footage over the years and everything.
Yeah.
What is it like for you when you do see him again, and material of him you've not seen before?
Well, that's a very good question, because I'm surrounded by people like, being a Cavern director, we've got the Cavern Club Beatles, who are an awesome tribute band. I do work with the Mersey Beatles, also a brilliant tribute band, but they're not John. I still get a shock if I'm walking anywhere and John's voice comes on, if there's an interview, YouTube or anything, and John actually starts talking. It's a different moment from the tribute bands that happen all the time. So hopefully this is going to be as real as it gets.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the film tonight.
Thank
and
you.
with that, it's back to you in the studio.
It's fascinating. Ron Howard, who directs it, said that they've re-digitised some of the concerts, that at the time when they were played, you couldn't really hear them because there was so much screaming, but now they've actually managed to, you actually can hear the
pictures
boys
are such
singing.
good quality, aren't they?
Yeah, really brilliant. The world premiere in Liverpool is underway now, and if you're wondering where Macca and Ringo were and Ron Howard, they're all in London because there's another premiere in half an hour for the second showing of the movie, but we had it first.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Well, Liverpool certainly did. Right, shall we move on to the weather? It's not a bad evening for those people who are heading down the blue carpet, is it?
Yeah, but remember the sun is going... I was a little uncomfortable, but normally it's very comfortable. Now then, let's move on. I'm sure most of us will recognise this. Okay.
Beatles' Money Can't Buy Me Love.
Very good. Everybody knows it, and hopefully it's got us all in the mood for our next story about a new documentary film on the Beatles getting its world premiere in Liverpool this evening, half an hour ahead of its London opening.
8 days a week, the touring years charts the rise of the Fab Four from obscurity in Liverpool to, of course, international stardom. Anne O'Connor got a sneak preview.
A force of nature whose songs have never been bettered. The Beatles shocked, rocked and charmed their way into our hearts and imaginations.
That was one thing to be said about us. We were very, very close to each other. We'd always stick together.
We all had to agree, so it was a strong decision.
It's a miracle in a way they didn't go mad.
Well, we had each other.
And now a new film, 8 days a week, The Touring Years, directed by Ron Howard, shines a light on the Fab Four's history as a live band and the reasons behind their decision to stop gigging and carry on their incredible careers from the confines of Abbey Road recording studios in London instead.
Playing to 56,000 people at the Shea Stadium. After that, you just sort of think to yourself, what more can you do?
I remember George bringing up the subject with Brian. Hey, is this touring going to be an annual event? And I think he was the first one that brought up the idea of, hey, I've had enough of this.
Their last official concert was in America in 1966, and the film documents how the band and the country fell in love with one another.
Disneyland or Doris Day and Rock Hudson or whatever, James Dean, Marilyn, everything was American.
What about the reports that you guys are nothing but a bunch of British Elvis Presley? It's not true.
New footage, new recordings, and a new perspective. Just when we thought we knew everything there was to know about the Beatles, along comes a film like 8 days a week, The Touring Years. A real treat for anyone with even a passing interest in the lovable Liverpool mop tops.
British Elvis Presleys, how dare they?
Unreal. OK, let's go over to Liverpool right now. It's a blue carpet where our correspondent Anne O'Connor is there. Anne, tell us more, please.
Well, Tony, in 15 minutes' time, the people here at FACT in Liverpool city centre will be the first in the world to see the new Beatles film. We earlier followed in the famous Fab Four's footsteps onto the balcony at Liverpool Town Hall, where they of course made that triumphant appearance to thousands of fans in 1964 when they returned from their US tour. Liverpool Council opened the Town Hall today so that fans could reenact the moment themselves. It is a very special day, and there's been bands playing tribute songs all day at the Cavern Club, where of course it all began. It is a special day, and for that we have a very special guest. Julia Baird is John Lennon's sister. You've come tonight to see it. Have you seen it before, Julia?
No, I haven't, and I know as much as you do about it, which is that it's footage from 62 to 66 with other things, exciting things, new things involved. I know that there's stuff from Paul, Ringo, photographs.
Paul and Ringo have said that watching it made them feel like lads again, and very poignantly said that it was like a reunion with John and George, who of course we lost a long time ago. You'll feel quite emotional, won't you?
Well, I hope not. I hope not too emotional. Yes, I mean, there is that aspect to it, that there is any time that I see John talking or singing as himself.
Do you remember those very hurly-burly years when he was rising to fame rapidly. Do you remember being with him and speaking to him?
Wasn't that rapid, you know? Paul says people think we made it overnight. We did 800 hours of rehearsal in Hamburg alone before we came back and jumped on the Cavern stage again. So yeah, I think they did a lot. It wasn't an overnight rise to stardom. America took it to its almost zenith from 1964 to 66. But before that, it had been a gradual sort of moving on until, you mentioned before, the Hard Day's Night, and then we all realised, even as a family, my goodness, what's going on here.
Did he tell you about touring? Because the film says that basically it was hard and that they gave up in the end because they couldn't be bothered playing to so many people screaming and not listening to the music.
Well, it just doesn't happen now, does it? You go to hear a fabulous band or artist and you do not sit and scream. It seemed to be... I think they did it for Frank Sinatra. They definitely did it for Elvis, and then they just went like ballistic for the Beatles. And you know, people say that on the which is the stadium in New York, Candlestick Park in San Francisco, in 1966, that they actually stood on stage. And I don't know if it'll be here because I've only heard this as a story. They stood on stage mouthing the words and said to each other, "This is it," and maybe this will be in, because I don't know if it's true or not.
Julia Baird, enjoy the film. Tomorrow we'll show you highlights from the London premiere, but for now, back to you.
Hi, Julia. What a great interview, and thanks ever so much for that. It looks fab. Fab, see? Fab.
Very good.
OK, time for sport now.
Now, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr have been talking about the brotherhood behind that band they were in. Beatles, I think. Oh, yeah. The premiere of their new documentary film, 8 Days a Week, took place in London's Leicester Square last night.
A host of celebrities were there, keen to share their memories of the Fab Four. Just a warning that Sarah Rogers' report tonight contains some flash photography.
The remaining Beatles reunited with a high five, greeting one another. Hi, brother.
We weren't like brothers, we were brothers, and we looked out for each other.
And 50 years on, the Mop Tops may have gone, but at the premiere of their new documentary, 8 Days a Week, London's Leicester Square greeted Ringo and Macca with the kind of mania they've become accustomed to.
Why do they scream? I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Hello, my name's Paul McCartney. This is Ringo Starr. This is John Lennon.
I'm George Harrison.
Well, you expect a red carpet at premieres, don't you? But not for the Beatles. They've got a plush blue carpet, and not only that, they brought a road with them, Abbey Road, of course, for the film, which charts their rise from Liverpool cellars to stellar success. And it was quite the stellar lineup too, with A-listers sharing their memories of the Fab Four, including two Grateful Pythons.
When we were growing up, everything the Beatles did changed things totally in our lives.
Oh, I was a Stones fan all along. The Beatles were such wets. But thank God to be the Beatles, because without George Harrison, Life of Brian wouldn't exist, Time Bandits wouldn't exist.
They're, you know, really the Beatles, you know. It doesn't get more mega.
The film visits the Fab Four's touring years and the cultural phenomenon the lads from Liverpool became.
We refused to play this show in Jacksonville because we found out the audience was segregated. And I think that was a big surprise for us to remember that.
Yeah.
The guest list looked more like a lineup at the Grammys than a cinema seating chart, but it helps when the documentary's director is Oscar-winning Ron Howard. A lot of our viewers actually are from Liverpool. Do you have a message for them?
Oh, well, congratulations again. You know, yet more to be proud of, because I think a lot of the spirit and the integrity and the sense of humor and the honesty they attribute to their upbringing there in Liverpool.
And even over in America, did you want to be a Beatle? I heard a story about a certain wig.
Well, I got a Beatle wig for my 10th birthday, 3 weeks after their first appearance on Ed Sullivan. So that shows you how quickly the craze took over.
8 days a week. And with a quick flash of that famous Beatles head bob and some cheeky charm, Macca and Ringo prove you can still make hits in your 70s and look as effortless as you did in the 1960s. Sarah Rogers, ITV News in London.
Still cool, those two, aren't they?
Standard day at the office for Sarah Rogers there. Carrie's with us now, and Carrie, it's suddenly feeling like autumn.
Beatles got its world premiere in Liverpool this evening. The blue carpet was rolled out for specially selected guests. half an hour ahead of its London opening. 8 days a week, the touring years charts the rise of the Fab Four, from obscurity in Liverpool to international stardom. Anne O'Connor has more.
A force of nature whose songs have never been bettered. The Beatles shocked, rocked and charmed their way into our hearts and imaginations.
That was one thing to be said about us. We were very, very close to each other. We'd always stick together.
We all had to agree, so it was a strong decision.
It's a miracle in a way they didn't go mad.
Well, we had each other.
And now a new film, 8 days a week, The Touring Years, directed by Ron Howard, shines a light on the Fab Four's history as a live band and the reasons behind their decision to stop gigging and carry on their incredible careers from the confines of Abbey Road recording studios in London instead.
Playing to 56,000 people at the Shea Stadium. After that, you know, you just sort of think to yourself, what more can you do?
I remember George bringing up the subject with Brian. Hey, is this touring going to be an annual event? And I think he was the first one that brought up the idea of, hey, I've had enough of this.
Their last official concert was in America in 1966, and the film documents how the band and the country fell in love with one another.
Disneyland or Doris Day in Rock Hudson or whatever, you know, James Dean, Marilyn, everything was American.
What about the reports that you guys are nothing but a bunch of British Elvis Presley?
It's not true, it's not true.
New footage, new recordings, and a new perspective. Just when we thought we knew everything there was to know about the Beatles, along comes a film like 8 days a week, The Touring Years. A real treat for anyone with even a passing interest in the lovable Liverpool mop tops.
Well, the premiere was particularly poignant for one of those specially invited guests. Julia Baird is John Lennon's sister. Anne caught up with her beforehand and asked her how emotional it was likely to be for her.
I hope not too emotional. Yes, I mean, there is that aspect to it, that there is any time that I see John talking or singing as himself.
Do you remember those very hurly-burly years when he was rising to fame rapidly? Do you remember being with him and speaking to him?
Wasn't that rapid, you know? Paul says people think we made it overnight. We did 800 hours of rehearsal in Hamburg alone before we came back and jumped on the Cavern stage again. So you know, I think they did a lot. It wasn't an overnight rise to stardom. America took it to its almost zenith from 1964 to 66. But before that, it had been a gradual sort of moving on until, you mentioned before, the Hard Day's Night. And then we all realised, even as a family, my goodness, what's going on here?
What's going on indeed. Manchester United